Hello and welcome to the newscast. This is another historic day for Korea, the 61st Armistice anniversary, that is. I'm Daniel Che with the latest on this hour. Where North Korea has gone ahead with another missile launch, this one aimed at U.S. forces based in South Korea. The North State media says the launch was carried out to coincide with the July 27th anniversary of the signing of the Armistice Agreement after the Korean War. It comes in defiance of a condemnation from the UN just 10 days ago. Our Yurian starts us off.
Pyongyang fired another missile into waters off its east coast on Saturday, a little over a week after the UN Security Council officially condemned North Korea for its previous series of missile launches in recent weeks. North Korea state media said Sunday that its leader Kim Jong-un had guided a rocket-firing drill the day before to simulate a strike on military bases in South Korea, where over 28,000 U.S. troops are stationed. This confirmed reports from Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff Saturday night that said a short-range missile, presumably a Scud-type missile, was fired into the East Sea from North Korea's western coast, near the de facto sea border between the two Koreas. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency says the launch was timed to coincide with the July 27th anniversary of the ceasefire agreement signed at the end of the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. Although the armistice means that North and South Korea are still technically at war, North Korea hails the day as a major national holiday, praising late leader Kim Il-sung for his achievement in bringing the country a victory in the Korean War. The Nodeong-Shinmun, the newspaper of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea, said in a front-page editorial on Sunday that the country should commemorate the victory by carrying out its military-first policy and strengthening its self-defense capability. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
If you're just joining us, we remind you that today marks the 61st anniversary of the Armistice Agreement that ended the Korean War. Earlier this Sunday, a ceremony was held at the Joint Security Area of Panmunjom to honor the sacrifices of those who gave their lives in the conflict. Our Kim Hyun-bin was there, and he brings us this report.
The Korean War started on June 25, 1950, when the communist government in the north launched a surprise invasion of South Korea. The war ended 3 years later on July 27, 1953, with a ceasefire and the signing of an Armistice Agreement that divided the country. Korea marked the day on Sunday with a ceremony honoring the sacrifices of the hundreds of thousands who died in the conflict. The event was held at the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom, the exact location where the Armistice Agreement was signed 61 years ago. General Curtis Scaparrotti, the commander of the United Nations Command, was in attendance, along with other senior officials and Korean War veterans.
By striving to maintain the armistice, we are honoring the sacrifice of the almost 180,000 men and women who died while fighting under the UN flag. And we acknowledge the estimated 2.5 million civilians who also died during the Korean War. When we take steps to maintain stability and security in the region, we display our desire to never again incur such a great cost.
In the wake of the recent provocative acts from North Korea, General Scaparrotti also had a strong message for Pyongyang.
Their continued opposition and defiance of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, as well as the international community norms, is unacceptable. And it further isolates them from the international community, further deprives their people of any hope of a prosperity in the future.
This ceremony not only serves to mark the signing of the Armistice Agreement, but it's also a solemn reminder that the two Koreas are technically still at war. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News, Panmunjom.
The Korean government has announced plans to team up with China to launch joint surveillance against illegal fishing in waters shared by the two countries. Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said Sunday that 2 to 3 joint inspection tours will be conducted during fishing seasons that attract a large number of Chinese boats. The agreement reached at a meeting in Weihai, China this week will be implemented in 2015, but China and Korea will start inspecting boats in the Yellow Sea in October. Korea has been working to stop illegal fishing in its waters for some time now, and 467 Chinese boats were seized for illegal fishing in 2012 alone. Confrontations between fishermen and Korean authorities have been often violent, leading to casualties on both sides. The recently unveiled government stimulus package will not have an immediate effect on the Korean economy. That's according to local analysts who are saying that's one big reason why they've lowered their third quarter earnings outlook for Korean companies. The combined outlook for operating profits for the country's 177 listed firms fell by over 5% in the past month, according to market researcher FN Guide on Sunday. Analysts had slashed estimates for about two-thirds of the listed companies. Hyundai Heavy Industries saw the biggest fall in its operating profit outlook by 53%. The outlook for Korea's third largest refiner, S-Oil Corporation, dropped by over 27%. Korea has topped another OECD ranking, this time in research and development funds. A report by the Korea Institute of Science and Technology Evaluation and Planning says that Korea's R&D budget made up the highest percentage of GDP in 2013 among advanced nations. The numbers indicate the country's R&D intensity, or R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP, came to 1.14%, beating Iceland and Finland for the top spot. It's a giant leap from 2004, when the figure for Korea was just 0.74% rather. Korea spent $13.7 billion last year for governmental R&D projects, the sixth largest among the countries tallied. The United States spent $133.5 billion, followed by Japan, Germany, France, and Britain. The report is based on the main science and technology indicators as released by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development back in June. We have confirmation of a new case of bird flu in southern Korea, signaling that efforts to contain an earlier outbreak have not been effective. Officials in Jeollanam-do province say they have confirmed the H5N8 strain of avian influenza at a duck farm in the southern county of Hampyeong. Quarantine officials say more than 40,000 ducks have been slaughtered at the farm to prevent the virus from spreading. This comes just about a month after the government confirmed the virus in the city of Daegu and Gangwon-do province. Korea suffered an AI outbreak earlier this year that resulted in the culling of more than 13 million birds. Moving on to the crisis in the Middle East, Israel has resumed its Gaza offensive after the installation of a temporary humanitarian truce. Israel had agreed to extend the ceasefire, but Hamas rejected it because it did not include a removal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Our Connie Lee has more.
The deadly 20-day conflict in the Gaza Strip has resumed. Just hours after Israel had agreed to a ceasefire, local media outlets reported that Gaza militants had fired rockets at Israel, and Israel had answered back. Before the rocket fire had resumed, Israel's cabinet had released a statement saying that it had approved an extension of a 24-hour humanitarian ceasefire that had started Saturday at the request of the United Nations. Israel added, however, that its military would act against any breaches of the truce. Hamas said it would not accept the ceasefire unless all Israeli troops left Gaza. The ceasefire on Saturday had been put in place to give residents time to assess the damage, store up on food, and recover their dead.
Humans are dead. Houses are damaged. The trees are dead and the livestock is dead as well. They destroyed the land, the trees, everything. They totally destroyed it.
The latest turmoil comes amid a new report that North Korea and Hamas militants are working on a new arms deal. According to the UK daily The Telegraph, Hamas has paid North Korea hundreds of thousands of dollars for missiles and communications equipment to help its offensive against Israel. The report cites Western security sources who say Hamas is requesting new supplies of rockets to replace the missiles that were used against Israel in the past 2 weeks or so. More than 1,000 people in Gaza have died, mostly civilians, since the conflict began on July 8th. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
We pray to hear some good news from those areas soon. Moving on to other stories, more Koreans are choosing to vacation in August this year. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport says the percentage of vacationers choosing to depart for their summer holidays during the peak season between late July and early August has fallen from 71% in 2005 to 60% this year. Meanwhile, the percentage of Koreans planning to take their vacations after the second week of August has gone up by 21.3% during the same period. The ministry said some of the factors contributing to the change include the extended mourning period in the wake of the Seoul ferry sinking in April and efforts to avoid the peak holiday season. Time for the weather. It was hot and humid in Korea over the weekend, but heavy precipitation is expected on Monday in most parts of the country, which should bring some relief. Now it's time to check out the weather conditions in your neck of the woods and around the world. Well, that's all from us on this Armistice anniversary. We are reminded that wars are the worst kind of tools for chiseling out peaceful tomorrows. We have more coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Do join us then. Thank you for staying with us.